Coach Carl Willis thought he was calling it a career, but a new opportunity presented itself, and now he's impacting yet another generation of student athletes.
Welcome to the Integrity Sports Podcast, covering local sports in the Southwest Georgia area, creating content that is factual, positive, and informative, promoting efforts by athletes, coaches, and sports administrators. Now, here's your host, Tim Estes.
Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Integrity Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Estes, and we hope that you'll make the Integrity Sports Podcast a part of your weekly routine as we discuss sports-related topics that are interest to people in Southwest Georgia. We had an incredible first week last week with over 25 people viewing our program, 2,500 people viewing our program across all platforms. Let me encourage you this week, if you're watching on Facebook, make sure you like and share the video. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Also hit the bell, the notification button, so that you'll know when we upload new programs. But thank you for making Integrity Sports Podcast a part of your weekly routine. Our guest today has been a very close friend to my family since the 1980s and has influenced many, many athletes over about 35, 40 years, I guess, and we'll get into some of that. But Coach Carl Willis, man, it's good to have you with us today.
Great to be here. I'll tell you what, I'm supposed to say go Tigers, and I'm going to say go Dogs. How about that?
I know you're a dog fan. We'll let you stay on that train. And, boy, they had a great year. Coach, as we get started, I know you and I have had a lot of conversation over the past week, and there's a lot of folks. We're going to talk today about the impact you have had on a lot of people, but there's a lot of folks that have made an impact on your life as well.
Absolutely. And one of them that I want to talk about today is Ricky Burgess. What a great individual. What a true lover of the sport, of people. And I'm going to tell you this, he has made a huge impact on my life as an individual, as an encourager, as someone who always had your back, and just a wonderful man with great integrity.
Absolutely. Coach, he had a big impact on me as a broadcaster as well, taught me a lot. So I know he's one of the guys that you and I both shared as a friend, and we sure miss him every day. Coach, I want to start this thing by going way back. Let's go back to the beginning when you got into coaching. I know Coach Richard, or Mr. Richard Fussell, who was our principal at America's High School, was one of the guys that brought you on. But tell me where this all began and some of the guys that were a part of that.
Well, I graduated from Cochran High School, and I had an incredible group of friends. Our senior class was just really close. I knew I wanted to get into some sports, so I really made my decision back when I was actually in 9th grade that I wanted to get in coaching, believe it or not. So I was in an organization called FTA, enjoyed that, Future Teachers of America. And then I was able to coach 2 years, a middle school team while I was at Middle Georgia College. We went undefeated 2 years. I was on the offensive side of the ball. Another college student was over on the defense, and then we had a head coach who actually worked for the school system. So I was able to do that, thoroughly enjoyed that opportunity. Then graduated from Middle Georgia, went on to Georgia Southwestern, was able to do my student teaching with Coach Alton Shell. First time I ever met him was the coolest thing in the world. He was actually doing some construction during the summer, and I came up. I said, I need to meet Coach Alton Shell. Do you happen to know where he's at? Well, I thought he was actually a custodian. When I first met him, he said, "You're looking at him." And so we built a friendship, a relationship. He took me under his wing. He and Coach Parrish, Mr. Fussell gave me a chance, Mr. Spencer Davis, and the rest is history.
Coach, I look back, I came here, I think my dad took his job here at what was then Buckeye Cellulose back in like 1981. And so my first year at America's High School was the 1983-84 year. You were there, and you look back at those people that were in place. yourself, Coach Doug Parrish, Coach Alton Shell, Coach Clyde McGrady. Boy, y'all had a dream team back then.
We sure did. And, you've named some of the guys, and I'll tell you, Coach Shell, of course, kind of kept us all in check. And you had Doug Parrish, who, in my opinion, is one of the finest coaches to walk on the sideline. You had Clyde McGrady, who has gone on. What a wonderful, wonderful individual, and did a great job on the basketball court, too. Jeff Antone, Eric Mance. You had, and then my personal favorite, who I kind of grew up with, that we started the same year together, was Coach Evelyn Wright. What an educational icon.
Yeah, Evelyn Wright, still an icon in this area. I get to see her from time to time as her grandkids and great-grandkids are playing in our programs now. But, Coach, I want to talk a little bit about those first few years as an assistant at Americus, and you kind of learning the ropes as a coach. We got to deal with some great athletes back then. I know I look back in my day in high school, and we had guys like Malcolm King that went on to play at Georgia Tech. You had Coach Doug Parrish's son, who played up at Tennessee, and Michael Whitehead. Talk to me about that time during your coaching career and getting to coach some of those guys.
It's funny that you came up with this. My first experience as a student teacher was to be able to be the wide receiver coach the first year on varsity. Coach Shell said, "You can do the job." And I had some great help. And who it was I was able to get a lot of the University of Tennessee workouts. And I worked with Doug Parrish his junior year going in his senior year. So I was able to throw a lot of footballs to him. I could throw a ball pretty well back in those days. And so we did a lot of work together, and him, and then of course his dynamic thrower was Coach Tim McPherson. And they were a tremendous duo. I think he's one of the first receivers I saw that was actually sometimes triple teamed. He had an unbelievable ability to get open. He was a great threat. And you got Malcolm King, and you got Steve Caldwell, and then you got a Jeff Gordon. You got Jeff Wall. You got Tuck Rush. You got so many folks that I've had pleasure working with. Victor Green back in the secondary. Victor played corner for me. I was kind of a journeyman as a coach. I coached offensive line. I started out as a wide receiver coach. Coached quarterbacks. You know about that. I also coached a little bit, and I coached a good bit in the secondary with Coach Doug Parrish on his side of the ball. Usually I was an offensive guy, but it really enjoyed that experience of working with Coach Parrish on defense.
Yeah, you talked about quarterbacks. I've got to mention this, this, but my brother Steve was able to be a quarterback under your tutelage. Back then, Coach Shell really liked to run the ball. He had toss right, toss left, and a dive play up the middle, I think. And you kind of were that guy that helped bring the passing game in. My brother Jay was the center, and you and I talked this morning. I think they're probably the only brother center quarterback combination that you've had.
Absolutely. It was funny that after you jogged my memory on that, that is the only brother combination at quarterback and at center, which are two key positions. So great story about Stephen. We're playing Jackson, and we're down, and it's late in the ball game. We got a chance to take the ball over deep in our own territory. Now here's what happens. Steve and I had always been able to communicate via signal. We weren't some of the first coaches to use signals. So Steve was so smart, he could reverse them. So if I shot him to him right, he could reverse them, and did a great job getting play calls in. Well, I think we had less than 2 minutes to go the length of the field. We throw some crossing routes to Chuck Cheek. Matter of fact, Chuck ran one across the field, Coach, and he actually got his leg stuck up under the fence, and they had to get him unhung to get him back on the field on the opposite side of the field. So they were not in a big hurry to get him loose. And then Toby Rush caught a couple. We're down to less than 30 seconds. And I tell Coach Shell, he says, "You got it. You make the calls." And he said, "You got it." So I said, "We want to run a pick right play." Excuse me, I didn't mean to say pick right. We're running a rub route, and I'm being very facetious there. And I tell Coach, I said, "Now, Coach, I see what I want, we're going to burn a play. He said, you going to do what? And I said, we're going to burn a play, Coach. We're going to set up for a touchdown. I said, it's going to work, Coach. I promise you. So we called the pick play. Free safety moved over. When he moved over, I knew I had a one-on-one coverage back over with my corner, back on the split side. I told Ernest Lewis, run a post corner, show a post, and then back off to the corner. He ran it wide open. Steve made the perfect pass in the corner, touchdown with 17 seconds left on the clock. We beat a team that had 3, I think, D1 players on it. They were loaded that year, and we just shocked them in their own house in Jackson, Georgia.
Coach, I want to talk some about that time in your career and how there was so much passion in our community for Panther football at that time. And that had to be a fun time for you to come through that program.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the mentality with our players that we were 14-point. We had 14 points in our bag before we even started the game. That was the mentality. These kids were prepared. It was just great to know every week that the kids were going to bring their lunch pail. They were going to work hard. They were going to do what they needed to do to prepare themselves. Community was surrounded. And, and there was a lot of good people in this community that rallied around to make sure that everybody was successful.
And Coach, you got your feet wet there at Americus, and then you had the opportunity to go be a head coach about 18 miles down the road at what was then known as Tri-County High School. And talk to us a little bit about that experience.
Well, what basically happened was Coach Shell retired, and so I knew I wanted to stay in coaching. I was offered a assistant principal's position, but I was not ready to hang up my cleats. So I said, I'm going to try this, and got a phone call and said, come interview. I really did not seek it out. I was asked to interview, had a great interview, was offered the job right after the interview. And a lot of candidates, I was very blessed. They said, need to make a decision. And I said, I'll let you know tomorrow. So within 24 hours, I had made a decision to go to Tri-County. And Larry Stubbs, who was my AD, gave me the opportunity, Mr. Herman Long. And so I had 2 requests, actually. Number one, that I could bring Doug Parrish as my defensive coordinator and bring Glenn Tidwell as our defensive back coach. They granted both of those wishes, and the journey began.
Coach, I got a chance to see you in what may have been the coldest football game I've ever been to in my career. And you were playing Americus High School at Tri-County and won it late. Got to be kind of a bittersweet moment when you face the place that you really love for so long.
Absolutely. Probably the most memorable game was when we won 28-0, and that was really sort of turned the program around up there. When I first got there, they had no lockers. They had limited facilities. They worked hard. Kids worked hard. Again, you had kids coming from 3 different counties, so you had to blend them. And I used to even have to say this was sort of one of our slogans. I said, I don't care whether you're from Sly County, I don't care whether you're from Marion County, I don't care whether you're from Webster County. And then a lot of us coaches were coming from Sumter. I said, or Sumter County, we've got to be one, and we've got to learn to blend together. And that was a huge undertaking. And so most of my kids were bused. So a lot of nights, my kids, after they got home, were bused back to the community. So it was a job just logistically to get things going.
This was during the time I had left Americus. I was in Montgomery at college, and you made the jump back to Americus, but not to Americus High School. You came back to Sumter County, if I'm right, and got a chance to coach a little bit with Lloyd Brochu.
I did. It was a great experience. Like I said, when I was at Tri-County, I felt like we had moved the program forward. We were able to get in the playoffs, which was huge for that program. And I felt like I needed to work on my 6-year degree in administration. So I actually took a year off. Believe it or not, I actually did not coach high school football one year. I worked in the Sumter County Recreation League, and my team was called the Raiders.
That's right.
And we had 11 players. Well, we lost one. So we finished the season, Coach, with only 10 players and got number 2. And
I remember that.
We missed by 1 touchdown. And Josh was my center, and he played defensive line for me. And so that was a great experience to be able to coach him that year. But then I left, and Coach Brochu asked me to come to Sumter County. It was a wonderful experience. Got to work with some good coaches there, and we actually beat America's the first 2 years I was there, and which again bittersweet, but at the same, and it was very strange to go in to what is now Alton Shell Stadium and be on the other side of the field. That's an unusual coaching experience to be able to do that. So I coached O-line, but I also coached quarterbacks there, and we had some success. We ran the veer, which I was very familiar with, got in the playoffs. We played Washington County one night, had them on the ring ropes. You know, they used to have the graveyard where the teams, after they would beat them, they would put well, we gave them everything that we possibly could that night and almost came out with a win. And it was a very good experience. Thoroughly enjoyed working for Coach Katie Brochu, the superintendent. She was very, very supportive of the schools.
Absolutely. A great superintendent. And Coach, you and I have talked about this several times over the years. I don't think Lloyd Brochu got the credit that he deserved. A good football coach.
Absolutely. I learned a ton of football from him, and he truly, truly loved his kids, and he would do anything in the world for them. I learned a lot from him. We would have our coaches meetings on Saturday morning, and I promise you, we had some very intense meetings, a lot of good preparation, and a lot of kids benefited from it.
Coach, you mentioned Josh, and in 2008, tragedy struck as your son Josh was killed in a terrible automobile accident on his way back to the University of Georgia. And the picture that we see behind you is Josh and him dressed in his University of Georgia uniform. You and I have always been very open about this, and I think you have influenced a lot of people in the way you've talked about Josh's life. But just want to give you a chance here to tell people what happened and what Josh was about and the legacy that Josh is going to leave.
Well, first thing I want to say is if you're a parent, cherish every moment you have with your child. Never complain about the fact you've got to take them to an activity. Never complain about the fact that you've got to guide them in the right direction, because it can be taken away from you in one split second. You know, we're blessed. The good Lord blesses us with children, and he expects us to take care of them and to do what we need to do to make sure they're raised up in his name. So that's my first message. My second one is that you got to give your kids freedom. You've got to give them a chance to grow. And that's what Josh did. He was a very independent young man. It was amazing. He did all of his applications for school. He basically took care of all of his needs. Basically all I had to do was sign his FAFSA paper. And so he basically had it going on. He was a very bright young man, very talented. On the stage, matter of fact, his claim to fame is doing the worm across one of the singers shows. So he was quite a character, and he always referred to himself as a Ranther, because his first 2 years he played for the Rams and the second 2 years for the Panthers. So he became a Ranther. So he was a very unique animal, so to speak. So, but no, he really really flourished when he got to Athens. He went up there 256 pounds, 6'2", cut down to about 225. And Tim, he could dunk a basketball backwards. He had turned into a daggum beast. He could really do it.
I remember that. Coach, let's talk some about what's happened since Josh's death. I know you You've established a scholarship fund. He always has a big blood drive in his name. Talk some about that.
Okay. Well, first of all, I wanted to tell you a little story. The actual weekend that he passed away was Super Bowl weekend, but he had come home, and Coach, I bet you did not know this, but he came home to help me with buddy basketball, which was one of y'all's programs with the rec department. So he actually came home to help me with that over in the Sumter County Elementary School gym. So that he came home to do some service, and really appreciated him doing that. And of course, he crossed the center line going back to Athens and a transfer truck. The worst call you could get. I remember the music that was playing in the gym when I received a phone call that I needed to get to Atlanta, that there was a John Doe from Americus that was in critical condition, and he was life flighted out of right outside of Madison, and about 51 nautical miles to Atlanta, to the medical center there. We got there, and he passed away just before we got to Atlanta. So as far as the his legacy, we've been very blessed. People have been very generous in giving us opportunities. Denise Burgess set up a blood drive, which is coming up very soon, in his memory, and they've done it every year. So this is an annual event that they advertise, and we're very blessed to be a part of that, Karen and myself. You know, Karen is a big proponent of helping him keep his legacy alive, and she has done a beautiful job with that. And then we also are very proud, Rebecca and Karen and myself are very proud that we have a Josh Willis scholarship that goes to student athletes, and this we have now given Tim over 90 scholarships to various individuals since his passing in 2008.
That's amazing, Coach. I love to hear that. One of the other things I wanted to discuss around this time, and this is what I remember during this time, is just the way that this community surrounded your family, and it transcended. It was people that went to the public schools and to the private schools. It transcended racial boundaries or socioeconomic boundaries. This community really wrapped their arms around your family, didn't they?
Oh, there's no doubt. Josh was very unique. We have a rec room here at my home, and so every year they would have an annual Madden tournament, and it would be kids from private school, you had public school kids, what have you. And I came in one day, and this is a pretty good sized room I'm in right now, and it was totally packed with individuals. The cars in our driveway and what have you looked like there was a funeral going on at the house. And so he was able to draw so many individuals together and have good friendships. So when he did pass away, the whole entire community, they're telling me now that it was about 1,500 people there, and they turned people away. I can remember when we drove from Rose Avenue to the church, that there were cars parked up above what was now the former Central Baptist Church. There were cars parked all the way down the street. Our whole church was completely packed, and so it was just an enormous turnout. He had a lot of his teammates came out of Athens. It was a horrible day weather-wise. I worried about a lot of our athletes coming in and what have you, and it was just amazing to see the turnout. Sure was.
And Coach, you've had all this impact on these football players. One of the things that a lot of folks know you for in this community is what you've done on the tennis court. I know you had the opportunity to coach tennis at Americus, and now serving as the tennis coach at Southland Academy. Talk to us some about that experience with these tennis athletes.
Okay, it was I sort of had to take a hiatus, if it makes sense. When I first started at Americus, I was actually a baseball player in the spring. Coach in the spring. And I did that for a couple of years. And then the rumor got out that I had played some tennis. And so I was asked to to head up the tennis program. Well, young and green, first head coach position, what have you, had girls and boys. And unbelievably, we actually went up to Warner Robins and won the region. And I was so scared. We had stayed overnight. I put the tape on the doors. I slept out on the balcony on that. It was a hotel right out there at the interstate. I was scared to death that one of my players was going to get out and I'd get in trouble for it. So I guarded them all night long. And we won the region in both. And so when I did that, guess what? It was tag, you're it for the rest of the time. So we rattled off region championships, went to the state, did real well there. I think we got to a Final Four one year. It's just hard to hit when you hit the North Georgia schools. It's just very difficult. But so then, of course, I left, became head coach. I took years off while I was head coach. When I came back to Sumter, I did some tennis coaching there without courts, which was unique. And then we wound up, when I came back to Americus, I had the pleasure of working with Terry Lee and Coach Resnick, and I've worked with Coach Deborah Hughes, the band director. I worked with Coach Landis, Coach Ford, and Dr. O. So I've had some really good, and Coach Mercer also. So I've had some good people to work with middle school over the years and varsity.
Absolutely. Coach, this may be hard for you to do. I don't know, but think back over your career and just throw a couple of snippets at what are some of your very best memories, be it a football play or something that happened on a tennis court. But give us an idea of a 40-year career. What are some of your best memories?
Probably, that's hard to put a finger on one particular opportunity, but I'm going to be very generic here. To be able to see young people that don't necessarily have what I refer to as God-given ability, and they take what they have and they give everything they possibly can to getting better every day. And sometimes you don't see that in the short term, but when you look over the long haul, you just are amazed at what they were able to do through their growth, not only physically, but mentally, but also spiritually, because I really believe a successful player has to have all three, or there's going to be a shortcoming somewhere. There's going to be a dent in the armor somewhere. So if they can do all that, but now that's being very generic. Probably one of the greatest times, I guess, would have been some of the nice wins that I had with Coach Shell, because there was nobody that was more joyous about seeing his players produced than Coach Shell. He was a very unique individual that, when he passed away, I was back and forth over to Alabama to see him, but I can remember having to convince him into getting into that helicopter to leave. He didn't want to fly. And I said, Coach, if you'll fly over there and let them take care of you, I'll be there in 2 hours. And so he did that. When I got to Dothan, there was a nurse out in the hall. She said, "Are you Coach Willis?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "He has been asking for you for the last hour." And so to be able to know that a man cared that much about you is one that I'll take to the grave for sure.
Yeah. I can remember, Coach, a few years ago, my daughter and I went to Macon. We went to the girls' state basketball championship, and Lexi, my daughter, and I, as well as you and Coach Shell, sat together during that ball game. And
that's exactly right.
My daughters came along at a time when they didn't know the passion that we all shared. And I can remember her asking me on the ride back, she said, "Dad, those two coaches that were sitting with you, it was like they were crying when those girls won." That's how much that Blue Panther blood kind of goes through your veins, isn't it?
Absolutely. You do. And it's something that will be with you forever. And you cherish those moments. But it was a very special time. It sure was.
And, speaking of family, the way you have impacted my family, now it's kind of come full circle. I've got a daughter, Lexi, that I mentioned, that's teaching, and your daughter, Rebecca, teaches in the same school system and is having an opportunity to mentor her. And then one of your good friends, Dean Batts, is mentoring my other daughter, Ashley, who's teaching over at Sumter Primary. So isn't it funny how this thing kind of comes full circle?
Absolutely. I was going to tell you, Dean has been one of those people for me. When Josh passed away, Coach, it was a very unique situation. I had to go up to Athens to clean out Josh's home. We had purchased a home up there for him and had some renters in it. And Dean basically made me the next day, that morning, get up. And he said, we're going to go take care of this today. So that's one hurdle you're going to have. So he basically forced me to go up there that day. And I'm so glad he did. He was the friend that said, hey, look, you're not going to waller in this. You're going to rise up above it. And because you're going to get to see him again one day. And you're going to triumph from this. And he's one of those guys that did that for sure. And I'll tell you this, Josh had a real good friend up there. And he was just one of the greatest guys. And his name was Jeff Henson. And he was a long snapper too. And he and I, believe it or not, if there's another individual on this earth that helped me through that, was Jeff Henson. And he's like a son to me. And then I also have some other people, Scott Burgess, Brian Malden, David Parks, AJ Bailey. Those guys love Josh. They were with him the night before the accident. And to this day, those are young men that I can look and I can lean on, and they know where I'm coming from. Matter of fact, Brian just reached out yesterday and said, hey, Coach, I'm looking forward to the podcast. And people like that, when they put on that text, Coach, I love you, that speaks 1,000 words, really does.
Well, the title of our program today was about a new opportunity. And you're now at Southland Academy, public school system. You get an opportunity that, if my information is correct, Coach, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, but the information may have happened. The opportunity may have come to light in a grocery store. We'll talk some about that, but tell us about what led to things at Southland Academy.
Just a conversation of niceties at 9:30 at a grocery store here locally. We kind of ran shopping carts into each other, Coach Murray and I. And I'll tell you this, if there's an individual that you can work for, he's one that you want to work for, because he's one of the finest men that I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. And he has done a beautiful, wonderful job, not only doing his administrative jobs, but also his coaching. His expertise in football and in baseball is phenomenal. And then other thing is the reunion of getting to work with Coach Doug Parrish again. What a great opportunity. And then get to hear and work with Coach Hammock. Coach Parrish had always bragged on Coach Hammock, what a great coach he was. Well, I'm getting to experience that, and he is so fun. And he's a big Auburn fan too now. So we enjoy our bantering back and forth. And then Coach Mike Shaddles. Boy, I have really enjoyed working with Coach Shaddles. We got Coach Freeman, who was actually a Georgia Tech graduate. So we've had a good time kind of going back and forth. Coach Brady, Coach Jones, Coach Mercer, who was a retired coach that comes down. I've just enjoyed getting to know him, and Coach Douglas, our basketball coach. So if I've left anybody out, I apologize, but I will tell you this, it's been a great experience. I love the game. It was an opportunity for me. I'll always be appreciative of the public schools, and I'm a big proponent of it, but I thoroughly enjoy what I'm doing now, and a wonderful opportunity to work with Coach and his program.
Absolutely. You said a lot of folks there. One guy I want to mention that I think you had while you were at the Parks and Rec department that's now coaching out at Southland, Blaze Hargrove.
Absolutely. I had the pleasure of working with Blaze. He did some, I have a program called Adaptive Physical Education at one time. And so he worked with me, and he's one of the best student teachers I've ever had. Matter of fact, it was funny. Even a year after he had left to go on to graduate and get his first job, kids would constantly ask me, "Where's Coach Blaze? Where's Coach Blaze?" So he made an impression on those kids, and when you're doing that, you're doing something right for sure, absolutely. But I'm also enjoying
Coach, we
coaching
need to wrap
tennis.
this up.
Okay.
Well, good. We need to wrap this up. We're getting close to the end of our time here, but I want to give you just one final opportunity, kind of as you talk to this audience that's watching this, Coach, and the impact that you've had on many that'll be watching it. Give you a chance to have the last word here.
Well, what I was going to say right here at the end, we're right in the middle of tennis season right now, so I've got my mind on trying to get a program going. Congratulations to Coach Hughes, just got her first win over at Sumter High School with their tennis program. So we'll be playing real soon, but I'm real excited. I had the chance to work with Coach Booker this summer. And then also I worked with Coach Cheryl Bailey's coming out to help work. She's going to help out some. And then Coach Lowe, who his dad is the headmaster down at Deerfield. Well, he was our quarterback coach, so he's had tennis experience. So he's going to help work our middle school program. So looking forward to that. But Tim, what a great opportunity to work with you, and I sure hope I have done my part to make integrity be something that everybody wants to enjoy. I was super impressed with the coaches the first week and what you've done.
Thank you, Coach, and want to thank everybody for making Integrity Sports Podcast a part of their weekly routine. Remember, please like this if you're watching it on Facebook and share it. We want to get our viewers so that even more people can enjoy this. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure and hit the subscribe button. Again, let me tell you this, our program today brought to you by our friends at Global Graphics. The banner that you see behind me, the logo up in the top corner above Coach Carl Willis, that was designed by the good folks at Global Graphics. So for all your graphic needs, go by and see Jerry and Charlie and the fine staff at Global Graphics. Coach Willis, thanks for joining us, and hope you'll be a fan of this program from now on.
Thank you very much.